Namaste, I am JVN. I am Dr. ANUPAMA GOYAL. I am working as Associate Professor in Botany in JAYOTI VIDYAPEETH Women's University, Jaipur. Today I will deliver my video lecture on reproduction in algae and life cycle in algae. And this lecture which I will deliver today will be helpful for the students studying in graduate as well as postgraduate streams in different universities. Well, I am Dr. Anupama Goyal. I am working as Associate Professor in Botany at JVWU Vidyapeeth Women's University, Jaipur. So, my topic is how the reproduction takes place in algae. Well, reproduction in algae takes place by means of vegetative reproduction, asexual reproduction, and sexual reproduction. So now I talk about the vegetative reproduction in algae. Well, fragmentation. Now in some multicellular forms, the plant body breaks into small fragments which are capable of forming new individuals. So I am talking about fragmentation. In some multicellular forms, the plant body breaks into small fragments which are capable of forming new individuals. Fragmentation is found in filamentous algae like Eulothrix, Spirogyra, and Gymnema. Reasons for fragmentation in algae are as follows. Filaments break down due to the strong currents of water. Second, filaments are injured mechanically. Third, due to the increased turgor pressure in adjacent cells, the filaments break. Fourth, breaking of filaments by sea animals. Now, I tell you about the reproduction in algae by means of hormogonia. So in blue-green algae like nostoc, oscillatoria, and cylindrospermum, during unfavorable conditions, trichome breaks into motile segments of varying length such as hormogonia. So in blue-green algae like in nostoc and oscillatoria, during unfavorable conditions, the trichome breaks into motile segments of varying length called as hormogonia. The fragmentation of the parent filament into hormogonia is due to the formation of intercalary heterosis, specialized separation disc or necridia, or due to the death and decay of the intercalary cells of the trichome. Now I talk about the asexual reproduction in algae. Now in a large number of algae, asexual reproduction takes place with the help of different kinds of spores and other structures. Basically, spores are meant for asexual reproduction, and each spore can grow into a new thallus. Spores are one-celled structure and are produced internally. In the case of algae, the spores are produced within the vegetative cell as in chlamydomonas or in a specialized structure called sporangia. So students, spores are formed inside the sporangia. In algae, asexual reproduction takes place by means of the following spores. So first of all, I talk about the zoospores. So what are zoospores? Zoospores are naked, flagellated, asexual spores which are formed in zoosporangium or directly from the vegetative cells. So the students, the question may be, the zoospores are formed in, you will write zoosporangium. The zoospores may be quadric or multiflagellates. Means the zoospores may be multiflagellate or they may be biflagellate in ectocarpus or in chlamydomonas. In ectocarpus and chlamydomonas, zoospores are biflagellate, whereas in Drapeneldeopsis and in Eulothrix, zoospores are quadriflagellate. What do we understand by quadriflagellate? Means zoospore is having 4 flagella. What do you understand by the term quadriflagellate? Means there are 4 flagella. And now in Vaucheria and Oedogonium, zoospores are multiflagellate, and in Vaucheria the multinucleate and multiflagellate zoospore is called as synzoospore. So name the algae in which synzoospore is found, and the answer is Vaucheria. If meiosis takes place during the formation of zoospores, then they are called as meiospores or mitozoospores. If mitosis occurs during the formation of zoospores, then they are named as mitospores or neutral spores. So what I mean to say is, if meiosis takes place during the formation of zoospores, then the zoospores are called as meiospores. Or if mitosis occurs, then they are called as zoospores, are named as mitospores or neutral spores. For example, in ectocarpus, both the types of zoospores are formed. In unilocular sporangium produces meiospores, and plurilocular sporangium produces mitospores or neutral spores. Now I talk about the hypnospores and achinids. Well, what are hypnospores? So hypnospores are thick-walled, non-flagellated spores with plenty of food reserve. They are produced under unfavorable conditions by some green algae. Hypnospores germinate into new plants on the return of favorable environmental conditions. For example, hypnospores are found in algae Chlamydomonas protosiphon. In Chlamydomonas nivalis, the walls of hypnospores become red. Why? Due to the presence of a pigment called as hematochrome, due to which snow becomes red in color. Now I talk about achinids. What are achinids? They are the resting cells which mainly serve as means of pollination rather than multiplication. During the formation of achinid, the entire protoplast of the vegetative cell rounds off, and the original parent cell wall, which also serves as a spore wall, becomes thickened. It is highly resistant. The achinids contain abundant reserve food and are formed next to a heterocyst, and or they may be found at the end of a trichome in the blue-green algae. With the return of the favorable conditions, the achinids develop into new filaments, for example, in Vaucheria and Eulothrix. And now I talk about the autospores, carpospores and endospores. So students, the asexual reproduction in algae occurs by the formation of autospores, carpospores and endospores. So one by one we will study about the autospores. Now what are autospores? These autospores are actually aplanospores which appear identical to the parent cell. Hence, They are referred as autospores. Liberation of the autospores takes place by the dissolution of the parental cell wall. On the arrival of favorable conditions, autospores develop into new algae, for example in chlorella and Scindesmus. So, students, Scindesmus is an algae in which autospores are found. And now I talk about the carpospores. So, what are carpospores? These carpospores are formed in carposporangium during triphasic life cycle of rhodophycean members. These carpospores are formed from the zygote and are diploid in nature. Carpospores are non-motile, and these carpospores germinate to form a diploid thallus. Carpospores are common in Polysiphonia, Batrachospermum, and in other red algae. Now I talk about the endospores in some unicellular blue-green algae. The cell becomes enlarged and its protoplast undergoes successive repeated divisions in 3 planes to form 4 to many spherical, non-flagellate, thin-walled and internally produced endospores. These endospores develop into new algae. For example, endospores are formed in algae Dermocarpa and Plurocapsa. Now I talk about the exospores, monospores and nanocytes. So first of all, what are exospores? So during exospore formation, Cyanophycean members, the sporangium gets burst at the apex and is exposed to the external environment, and further by successive repeated divisions of the cell contents, the spherical non-motile spores are formed, which are called as exospores. All spores get liberated one by one. For example, exospores are formed in the algae Chemisiphon and in Stichosiphon. Well, now monospores, spores which are produced singly in sporangia are called as monospores, and the sporangia are called as monosporangia. So students, you may ask one question: monospores are produced in which sporangia? The answer is monospores are produced in monosporangia. Monospores are formed in the members of Rhodophyceae and Phaeophyceae. Monospores are haploid and naked. The entire protoplast of a uninucleate sporangium gets transformed into a spore. Monospores are liberated by the rupture of the sporangial wall. For example, monospores are formed in the algae Porphyra, Porphyridium and Bengia. Now I talk about the nanocytes. In some members of crucocales, for example in Glyocapsa algae and in Microcystis, the cell contents divide repeatedly to form small endospore-like structures, and Gettler called them as nanocytes. Now I talk about the tetraspores and then how the sexual reproduction takes place in algae. What are tetraspores? So in brown algae, non-motile spores called as tetraspores are formed within the specialized cells called as tetrasporangia. What I mean to say is, tetraspores are the non-motile spores, so they are lacking the flagella, and these tetraspores are formed inside tetrasporangia. Tetraspores are produced on the diploid plant and are haploid. 4 tetraspores are formed by the reduction division of the diploid nucleus of the tetrasporangium. Tetraspores germinate to give rise to the alternate haploid or sexual plants. For example, tetraspores are found in the marine alga Polysiphonia. Now, how the sexual reproduction occurs in algae? While students, sexual reproduction in algae occurs by means of isogamy, anisogamy, and oogamy. So, first of all, I will talk about isogamy. It takes place by the fusion of two morphologically and physiologically similar motile gametes. Such gametes are called as isogametes. They are indistinguishable into plus and minus strains. An isogamy can be seen in the algae Eulothrix and in Chlamydomonas. Now, what is an isogamy? In an isogamy, fusion takes place between morphologically and physiologically distinct gametes called as anisogametes. The male gametes or microgametes are smaller and they are more active. So the male gametes are also called as microgametes, and the male gametes are more active in comparison to the female gamete, and the female gametes or macrogametes are larger and sluggish. The female gametes, which are called as macrogametes, they are large in size, so they are sluggish, and passive. For example, in Chlamydomonas brownie and in Pandorina, the isogamy is found. Now I talk about the oogamy. Well, algae also reproduces sexually by oogamy. So what is oogamy? This is the most advanced type of sexual reproduction. The gametes are produced in special sex organs. The female sex organ is enlarged. It is called oogonium. So what is the name of the female sex organ? The female sex organ is called as oogonium, and the female gamete or egg ovum is formed within the oogonium. The male sex organ is smaller in size and is called as the antheridium. So the male sex organ in algae is known as or is called as antheridium. Male gamete called as sperm or anthrozoid develops within antheridium. In this process, a large non-motile egg or ovum fuses with a small motile sperm or anthrozoid to form a zygote. For example, oogamy is seen in Volvox, Cara, Colloquete, and in Vaucheria. So, what is oogamy? Male gamete, which is called as the sperm or anthrozoid, fuses with the ovum to form the zygote. Now, a special kind of sexual reproduction is shown by the red algae. The male gametes are non-motile and are called as spermatia. So, in red algae, for example, in Polysiphonia, the male gametes are called as spermatia, and these spermatia are carried to the female sex organ or the carpogonium by the water currents. Spermatia adhere to the trichogyne of the carpogonium, and then the intervening wall between the two disappears. The nucleus of the spermatium fuses with the egg to form the zygote. And now I talk about the autogamy and hologamy. So students, what is autogamy? You all are well aware with the autogamy which is found in diatoms. So autogamy is reported in diatoms where the fusing gametes are formed from the same mother cell and are haploid. After fusion, they form a diploid zygote with no genetic variation. Then hologamy. What is hologamy? In some unicellular algae, for example in Chlamydomonas, Dunelila, the vegetative cells of different strains plus and minus male and female and male behave as gametes and fuse to form zygote. This process is called as hologamy. Now I talk about the types of life cycles in algae. According to Bold and Viney, there are three fundamentally different patterns in the life cycle of algae, but Frisch has recognized broadly four main types of algal life cycles. First is the haplondic life cycle. Well, this haplondic life cycle is found in the algae Chlamydomonas, Eulothrix, Oedogonium, Spirogyra, Gymnema, and a number of other green algae. And in Chrysophyceae also, the main vegetative plant body is gametophytic and haploid in nature. It bears haploid gametes in the gametangium. The gametic fusion under the process of syngamy results in the formation of diploid zygote. The zygote undergoes reduction division immediately or after some resting period, resulting in the formation of 4 haploid meiospores. So this diagram shows the haplondic life cycle in algae. So here is the gametophytic plant. It gives rise to gametangium, which is haploid in nature, and now 2 gametes are formed, and these gametes are also haploid as you see in the diagram, and these gametes plus and minus fuse to form fuse with each other. This is called a syngamy to form the zygote, and then the zygote undergoes meiosis to form the meiospores, which again germinate to form the plant. Now thank you students for listening me patiently. I will next time deliver this lecture about the life cycle of algae.